It's that time of year again. The new iPhone is here. We just got them, and on this episode of the Macworld podcast, we'll talk about our first impressions of the new phones, as well as iOS 15. Stick around. Before we get on with the show, we have a word from our sponsor, Declutter. Ready to buy a new iPhone 13? You can save some money on that new iPhone by trading in your old phone for cash with Declutter. Declutter is the fast, easy, and totally free way to sell mobile phones, iPads, MacBooks, Apple Watches, and much more. Declutter pays up to 33% more than carriers, locks your valuation in for 28 days, and pays you quickly by PayPal or direct deposit. Visit macworld.com/trade-in and use the code MACWORLD10, that's MACWORLD10, to get 10% extra for your trade-in. That's macworld.com/trade-in and use the code MACWORLD10 for an extra 10% with Declutter. Welcome to the Macworld podcast. I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross.
Good morning.
And Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
So we got new iPhones. The iPhone 13 doesn't officially ship until Friday. Apple was kind enough to send us eval units. Jason has the 13 Pro. Mike has the 13. I'm sitting here waiting for my phone on Friday. I bought the giant phone, the iPhone Pro.
Yeah,
Max.
I'm getting the Pro Max on Friday also, Roman. We can compare notes.
And so they've been playing around with them. You've only had them for a few hours, so to say that you had like everyday regular usage, we're not quite there yet, but guys been doing like benchmarks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yep.
It's been about a day.
Wait, first, Jason, what color did you get?
Sierra Blue.
How blue is it?
It's kind of a very powdery blue color. It's a lot lighter than the, what did they call, Pacific Blue or something for the Pro last year? And it's a lot less bold. The Pros are, of course, kind of have a much more matte finish and color than the regulars. They have bolder colors, but yeah, it's Sierra Blue, and there's a case, which I'll have a case on it anyway. Don't really care that much about the phone color. It's more the case color.
I got the blue, the nondescript blue iPhone 13. It's also significantly lighter than last year's blue, which was more like a royal blue. Yeah, this is more like a sky blue. Mm-hmm. It's nice, Got no issues with it. It's nice.
And we've had them for a day, and so we've basically been running mostly benchmarks because generally we like to do all that first before we set it up for our daily use, so there's not all this stuff happening in the background when we're doing benchmarks. So we have a good idea of how they perform, but we don't have a good, we've been running around with them every day for a week and that kind of experience with them yet.
Yeah, which is really what the review will be. I mean, the benchmarks are, well, let's start there. So performance-wise, just, what we're running on Geekbench, it's CPU similar, graphics are better. Battery life is way better.
Only on the graphic stuff, but just CPU stuff, it's a good 10% or so better. And then a little more than that for multi-core CPU stuff. And then when it comes to compute, which Geekbench does with the graphics cores, and it's doing GPU compute stuff like face matching and fast Fourier transforms and stuff. So it's not graphics performance, but it uses the GPU. And that stuff will probably show more of a difference between the 13 and 13 Pro because there's that extra. Like you said, there's that fifth GPU.
Do you guys know off the top of your heads, compared to previous CPU updates, what kind of?
I mean, not at the top of my head, but I have the numbers in front of me.
Yeah, on both of them, the CPUs are 10% more, 1740 or so, 1750 for single core Geekbench, 4700 for multi-core. That's up from about 1600 or just under 4000 for the multi-core. So and that's going to be pretty similar across the line. Compute, I don't have the numbers for what do you have your Geekbench 5 compute numbers, Mike?
I did not run Geekbench 5 yet. Yeah, hold on. I mean, I'll run 5 while you're talking right now.
Yeah, on 4. And on 4, I got 49,000 in compute.
Okay.
So significantly bigger.
Yeah, which makes sense, as we were just saying, because it does have
the 5th, GPU.
the extra core. Yeah. Uh-huh. I mean, what you'll see in day-to-day real world use is nominal.
Yeah.
But the numbers are nice.
I mean, it's going to make a difference in 3D game graphics too. And we'll see your scores when you get all those in. But, I saw a big improvement in things like 3D Mark, for example, compared to the iPhone 12. And some of that is the extra core, and some of that is things like more memory bandwidth and, just other general optimizations they've done in the chips.
And to be fair to Apple or to they were already way ahead of like Qualcomm and Android and with the A14. I mean, they blew away those phones, even like the S20 and stuff, or even the S21.
Yeah, you would find certain 3D graphics tests where the best Android phones were in the ballpark, but then when you look at the whole picture, CPU and other graphics tests and stuff, it just wasn't close. And now Apple just, at least in the Pro models in particular, they just took they're just like, 30% faster, deal with it. Like, what are you going to do? So yeah, Apple's way out and ahead here.
For me, it's fast enough. It's more than fast enough.
Yeah. It's way fast enough.
Yeah. It's been fast enough since like the iPhone 7.
But to be fair, this really isn't very incremental. It's a pretty, like, any 10 to 15% CPU performance is nothing to complain about for 1 year. And
especially year over year, yeah, with the same architecture.
GPU performance is way better. Like, it's probably going to get 20% or so on the regular 12 and 30 to 50 depending on the app for the Pro. Like, and that's huge for 1 year.
Yeah.
For 1 year update.
It already outpaces like whatever the next Qualcomm 900, whatever they call it. We can bank on that.
One of the tests that we run is 3D Mark's Slingshot, which is a bit old and it doesn't always run well. You have to run it a few times. Sometimes it crashes. We rely more on their newer wildlife benchmark, but we run the old Slingshot extreme mode benchmark. And I found one of the interesting things was it actually just said maxed out. It didn't give me a score. Maxed out with an exclamation point. And it has not done that yet for that test. This is the 13 Pro is the first phone I've seen to just give me no score and just say maxed out.
Yeah, this is the first time, Jason Snell wrote an article today about the A15, and this is the first time Apple has really differentiated it at all. Mm-hmm. So we got that extra GPU core in the Pro, and then the Mini appears to be downclocked a bit. Oh. So it's really like a family of processors that they're releasing for their products and kind of differentiating it where it needs to be.
Yeah, matching clock speeds to the different different form factors and stuff like that isn't anything new. That's Intel and everybody does that all the time.
Yes, they do.
And AMD, like every laptop you buy, has different headroom for the clock speeds, and clock speeds are on this moving target.
It's the first time we've seen it with the A series, as far as I know, anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I got my Geekbench scores now, Jason. Okay. So compute is 10,671.
10,671, and my compute for 5 was 1447. So almost 40% more. Well, right, because it's extra. That extra GPU core makes a big difference.
Yeah, and so compared to the 12, it was 9439, so a little bit better. Mm-hmm. CPU single multi. I got 1728 single, 4485 multi. That's pretty similar to the 12. The 12 is 1599, so about 16, and 4107 for multi. So a little bit better, but close. Mm-hmm. The big gains is battery life.
Yes.
Yeah, the battery is great.
it's extremely great. Yeah.
Do you guys know the specs on the battery? Do you know how big the batteries are, the sizes?
Yes. Apple, in its some regulatory filing in Europe or something, disclosed it, and they disclosed it in watt hours, which is better, but also not what people use typically with phones, so it's hard to compare. And I converted them all to milliamp hours, assuming the same voltage and stuff as previous phones. So the iPhone 13 Pro has a 3125 milliamp hour battery. The 12 Pro is 2815. So that's,
Talking about the 13? 13, or are you talking about the
12? Right.
You said
say 11, 12. 11.
the 13 Pro was 3125. The 12 Pro was 2815. So that's 10% bigger. The 13 regular non-Pro is 3240. It's actually slightly bigger than the Pro. It's more watt hours than the Pro. It's a little bigger. And the 12 non-Pro also was 2815. They were the same last year. It's weird because Apple's got a little bit bigger battery in the non-Pro 13 than the Pro. I think it's just maybe because they have more room in there without the extra camera. It's to do with the camera modules taking up more space or something, but it's just a slight bit bigger in the regular non-Pro. The Pro still gets better battery life though. And that all comes down to the display. The Pros have their new OLED display with what they call an LPTO backplane, which it's the same thing they've had on the Apple Watch since the Series 5 that lets them, it uses less power to create the same brightness, and it makes it easier for them to run it at a really low refresh rate. Same thing they've had since the Series 5 with the Apple Watch, where they got to always on mode there. They don't have the always on mode in the iPhone, but same display technology, and it lets them, that ProMotion, letting them run the display down to 10 hertz if they need to, up to 120, and then just in general using less power in the display. We got better battery life out of the Pro than the regular, even though the battery was just slightly smaller.
And pretty significant. You got about an hour better than mine.
Yeah, about an hour better. You got 491 minutes, and I got 555 minutes. And it's about what they said. And to let people know what we're talking about with this, we run Geekbench 4's battery rundown test with no True Tone, no auto brightness, turning off all that stuff. Just a constant 200 nits of brightness measured. And that way we can compare one phone to the next, even though they have different displays and different brightnesses and all this other stuff. Be trying to get as apples to apples as possible. There's no perfect battery test. The battery tests are tough.
Yeah, they are. I started mine at 6:30 last night and went to bed. It was about 30%.
Yeah,
and so it'll last. It'll last.
It's a lot more than previous iPhones. To give you an idea, the 13 Pro, the 12 Pro lasted 412 minutes, and the 13 Pro 155 minutes. So that's almost, what is that? 100 that's more than 2 hours more. I think that's good. That's a lot for constant screen on time. And what Geekbench 4 does is it basically runs the Geekbench 4 benchmark in the background over and over without changing the display. The display just counts down a timer, and it has like a little pause between runs to let the thing cool down. And that's all it does. It just runs it over and over. And we like that because all these sort of video tests where they just play a video forever, all that does is stress the video decoder, like the video block. The CPU just sits there doing not much. The GPU just sits there doing not much. This is kind of more of a stress test for phones. So yeah, it's just incredible. We'll see what it's like when it when we've used them at daily use, like for all day, and see what we're left with. But
also should be said, like the processor, Apple was already pretty far out front with battery life on the iPhone, and this is only going to make it that much better.
Yeah, it's not as extreme because you can find those Android phones that have just monstrous, but they just throw huge batteries in there. It's certainly crazy how efficient Apple's being. Like the battery length they get per watt hour of battery is just crushing everybody.
Yeah,
it's just not even, but just even in absolute terms, battery life ought to be pretty darn great.
The Pro Max has, I think, 44 or 4,500 milliamp hour battery, which is the biggest Apple's used so far.
Yeah, 4373, around 4,400.
Okay, yeah, okay. And by comparison, the Galaxy Note 7, which was the one that blew up, that had a 5,000 milliamp hour battery. So yeah, Android phones have been using huge batteries for a long time. With relatively small batteries, have been able to outpace them. That's why we're seeing such a big jump, because they went higher capacity. The A15 has way better power handling from what we can tell.
I'm not sure how much that is, because if you look at the phones that don't have the better display, the LPTO displays, the battery life extension is pretty well in line with the increase in battery size. It's pretty close. Most of the heavy lifting is just bigger batteries in there. But on the Pro, you have on top of that a more energy efficient display and the ability for the display to clock down to low refresh rate, and that's just adding so much. When we haven't tested it yet, but I bet that the 13 Pro Max will get probably 12 hours ish on that Geekbench 4 rundown, which is just bonkers. It's just crazy.
I'm going to be loving that. Can't wait for that.
Jason, have you played with the display at all enough to get an impression?
Not much. Literally, it sits there running benchmarks, so it's like that. It's been sitting there, and that's just the worst possible way to test a display. I'm actually, while we're recording this, going through the whole like setup transfer process to go ahead and set it up to be my daily driver and just use it all day, all the time. And I got to get a lot of photo tests too. That's the other big improvement here is the cameras they're a bit improved on the 13, but significantly improved on the 13 Pro. And I'm really gonna have to A to B test that.
Some of the macro shots I've seen in the early reviews that were published are pretty spectacular.
That's one of those things people are going to have so much fun with, because things like cinematic mode and stuff like that, like most people don't mess around with those kind of settings and go in there and turn those things on. But macro, it's not a mode. You just move your camera really close to something and it just shifts to the ultra wide lens and it keeps the focus, and people do that all the time. You're going to see so many,
people are doing that now, and they're taking, semi-focused photos of like flowers and stuff, because they don't realize that it doesn't really have that until now.
Yeah. It can't really focus that close, or they use the zoom. It's going
to be pretty remarkable,
which isn't the same as getting close. Yeah. So you're going to see so much of that. People are going to use that so much. One more quick thing on battery life. I was just today looking at how far they've come compared to 4 years ago, the iPhone XS, which was their sort of, their high end, not max size phone. That was 264 minutes on the same test versus 555.
Right, it's to double.
So it's practically doubled battery life in the last 4 years.
And that's, with similar all around basic size display, and that's just, that's awesome.
Not crazy different in terms of size of display and everything. And that's at the same time offering way better performance, probably doubled performance as well. So yeah, Apple has just been crushing it.
Our discussion will continue, but first a word from our sponsor. Upgrade the smart way with Declutter. Sell your mobile phone, iPad, Apple Watch, or MacBook today. Get a free quote for your old device, ship it to them for free, and get paid quickly. Visit macworld.com/trade-in and use the code MacWorld10, that's MacWorld10, to get 10% extra for your trade-in. Declutter. It's smart for you, smart for the planet. Now, back to the show. So while we can't talk about the photo quality and stuff, what about the camera bumps? Are they noticeably different than from what the iPhone 12 had?
Way bigger.
Yeah, yours is bigger. The 12, I'm sorry, the 13, I put it in a 12 case, and I could shove it in there if I had to. It didn't fit right. But the Pros is a pretty big difference.
It's not even close.
Camera size.
Yeah. And people make a big deal about the notch being smaller. They didn't do anything with it.
They didn't do anything.
So it really...
It's the icons are just kind of centered now.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it'll be an iOS 15.5 feature.
Yeah.
Where you can flip the toggle and get the battery percentage.
Just give me my battery percentage. Just that's all I want in my life is battery percentage back.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of swiping down to see it.
Yeah, it's very annoying.
Yeah, there's room for them to put another little tiny something on either side. And I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would love to see it. So yeah, that part of it. Other than that, it really just feels like the 12. The 13 Pro feels like the 12 Pro. It's got very similar weight. I know it's slightly heavier, probably because the battery's bigger, but it feels the same to me. The steel feels the same. The thickness is unnoticeable. Like you can't. Mm-hmm. It's just got a way bigger camera bump.
What's funny about the notch? I find it to be actually more distracting now because the icons are so floaty. The status bar icons, like they're it looks like there should be an extra something up there, because before they fit nicely next to the notch. Now they're just kind of floating in this space around it, and like the time, for example, is there,
right?
But it looks like why can't there be like you could say like 9/22 next to it now? There's enough space for that if they wanted to, it seems.
It actually draws your eyes to it more because...
personally, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's definitely smaller. Like, I can tell it's smaller.
Yeah, you can immediately see it's smaller.
Yes.
I use dark mode most of the time, and my dark mode wallpaper isn't bright enough that I see, but as soon as I open Safari or anything where it's white up there, like you can just immediately notice it's smaller.
Yeah, it's definitely smaller. It's just frustrating that Apple didn't do anything with, like, why make it smaller if you're not going to do anything to accentuate the smallness?
Anything else about the hardware that people should know about or anything like that?
One thing that's interesting, and I wonder if this is a response to a weird issue that a lot of people had. So the buttons are a little bit lower on the new phones. And, I came across this a few times, but I know on Twitter and Apple forums and stuff, people took accidental screenshots a lot by holding the wrong buttons. And I wonder if they moved that because of how you naturally hold it. So now you won't naturally have your thumb over the power button until you want to go there. I mean, it's not a huge difference. It's about maybe an inch or maybe half an inch lower. But it's definitely, it was seemingly
it's like a centimeter, not even a centimeter maybe, but it is definitely a little lower. Your cases aren't gonna, like you said, like I mashed it into a case.
No, and I wouldn't recommend doing that. Just buy a new case.
I wonder if it has to do with that, or if it has to do with things like
the antenna lines are in the same spot, but I don't know what internally it's doing.
I don't know either. I'll be glad if they didn't. Oh no, it's not. You know what? It's not going to help anyone with screenshots because the side buttons move down just as much. The volume buttons are moved down, but so is the side button. Yeah, so it's still on opposite sides of the phone, because that was what caused it with everything. Is you pick up your phone and you need to hit the side button, and you kind of squeeze both sides, and then you end up hitting the up and the side. I think you're still going to do that. Being the side button being a little lower. And the volume buttons for that matter, I think they are a little easier to reach while you're holding your phone with one hand. I like them here better, but I don't think they're going to fix the screenshot problem.
I mean, you're probably right. It's probably some other reason why they did it, but it's a curious change because it's so small.
I got the 1 terabyte version of the Pro, which is absurd. That's more than my MacBook has. And I think that's all about shooting in ProRes, I think, which isn't enabled yet. That is coming in a software update later this year. But I know one journalist asked Apple how much that takes, and they said it can take like up to 6 gigs per minute.
That's something.
Which is
that's a lot of gigs per minute.
Like you shoot can you imagine? I mean, and if you're shooting ProRes, it's just a file format. It's not a quality setting. It's just it's sort of like an ultra fast and low compression file format that's great for editing. It helps you do editing without things being noisy or constructed or anything like that. So if you're not a video editor, you don't care. Don't worry about the ProRes stuff. But if you are and you shoot 20 minutes and there goes 120 gigs, like that's why there's a 1 terabyte option. Just imagine how long that takes to get off your phone, right?
Through AirPlay.
Like just to transfer it all. Right. I mean, AirDrop is fast,
AirDrop,
but
that's
like
what I meant.
still have a good router and stuff, because
that's when you start wondering if USB-C is on the way for at least the Pro model at some point.
Yeah, there are plenty of Lightning adapter things where you can like plug in an SD card and Lightning and move things over with the Files app and stuff like that. But that's you can't shoot and record to external storage live. You're still going to fill up your phone, and then you have to move that file.
So these phones come with iOS 15. You guys have actually been using iOS 15 for a while. If there was one thing somebody should be aware of when they upgrade to iOS 15, is there one thing that people should take care of or notice, or something they should tend to in particular when they upgrade to it? Something that
I'll let
stands
Jason
out?
handle this one.
To me, I think the two things that someone's going to notice like right away first day is, first of all, Safari is all whack. Like because people they show up these like splash screens, like here's what's new in the App Store when you launch the App Store the first time.
Yeah.
Pay attention to all those things, but people don't. And they just hit next. And Safari, like the address bar is going to be on the bottom, and swiping moves between tabs and all this stuff. And it's going to be really like confusing. And everyone's going to go, why did they change this? And all that other. You can go into settings and then Safari and go back from, they didn't call it from tab view to single tab or something like that. And that puts everything back on the top and it makes it the way you used to use it. You can get your old Safari back. The tab management's now a grid, and that's fine. But other than that, Safari is going to be the thing. The other thing is going to be focus modes. They kind of changed Do Not Disturb into this flexible, multiple different kinds of Do Not Disturb things called focus modes. And it'll transfer over your old Do Not Disturb, if you had it like Do Not Disturb when you're sleeping, to a bedtime focus mode, and that's fine. But you'll get in your car and start driving, and it'll just detect you're driving and turn on the driving focus mode, and you won't know. Like you'll go, oh, you'll pick up your phone while you're driving like a bad person and swipe it. It'll go like, you'll have to hit the button that says I'm not driving to turn off that driving focus mode, which is kind of the point. But like focus mode will like inject itself into your life. Everything else seems like they're features within apps, like the shared with you stuff within everybody's app. That's not going to really like change the way you use apps, or it's not something you have to adjust to. It's just a nice thing. It's like, oh, here's that link someone sent me in messages. It's already in my Safari thing. Fine. That doesn't hurt you one way or the other.
The focus mode stuff works across. There's a toggle, but it's on by default. It works across all of your devices, which is interesting. So if you turn it on your iPad, say, it'll be on everywhere and vice versa. So that caught me by surprise. I'm gonna write this up at some point soon, but I'm on board with the new Safari now. I've learned to like it. It's
okay.
Well, I have thoughts, but yes, as Jason said, it's a lot different. Some people will hate it. Absolutely, right off the bat, it's going to be like, whoa, what's going on here? Why is everything so different? But I'm going to say give it a chance. Don't automatically go into Safari settings and bring it back to what it was, which will put the address bar back up top. It's an interesting change, and over time, give it like 3 to 4 weeks. I think you might learn to like it. Jason hates it.
I hate it less since they fixed a lot of stuff with that low bar. It still has the problem of being way too close to the
home indicator
bottom of the screen where you swipe to multitask apps. And I still want the swiping to be back and forward in the page, not jumping between tabs. I wish that was an option. The fact that it's on the bottom isn't really the biggest problem with me, though. It's the other stuff, and they've addressed a lot of that. But still, I gave it a week or two, and then I just put it back on top and said, you know what? Once you start scrolling and the address bar goes away anyway, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, right.
One of the things people need to know is that address bar, because it's kind of floating, certain web pages that are like asking for a form input or something, if they don't scroll, it can cover up a part you need to access. And normally you would just scroll and the address bar would like move to the bottom and no longer be floating. It would be this little thing, but you can't scroll. So it's like, how do I put in my zip code or whatever? You can swipe away that address bar. You can swipe down and it'll meld into the bottom where it's no longer floating. And then you can access your form. That is not obvious. And it's not something that most people are going to notice right away. Or you can kind of tap into an empty space of the web page and make it. It's not clear, but that's the place where it starts to hang up the most, I think, is when a web page needs to get form data or an address or something like that, and it's getting underneath that floating address bar.
What else about iOS 15? I like the look of the new notifications.
The summary is cool. You got to be a little bit proactive, for lack of a better word, with it, and go in there and kind of pick the apps that you don't want to show up regularly. But it's a neat feature. Definitely keeps down the alerts, and I kind of like getting that package notification thing at night. Like, oh, what did I miss? I just go through, swipe. But it's a neat feature.
There's a new Apple Wallet, the wallet that MagSafe wallet that sticks on the back, that it's got an updated NFC. That Apple called it an NFC chip, which I guess is not technically correct, but it's more like saying, it's one of those passive things like an NFC enabled tap to pay gas credit card or something, right? It's updated. It always knew when you stuck on an Apple Wallet, but I think it only knew this is the color, black Apple.
Something with the cases,
that's it. Right? And now it knows essentially a serial number, right? It's this Apple Wallet. And the way Find My works, it's not like you have an AirTag or something. It's not following your wallet around, but you can register the wallet with AirTag, and when it disconnects from your phone for more than a minute, your phone lights up and goes, hey, your wallet's been off for a minute. This is the location where that happened. And that's
last location.
So you kind of get that last known location.
Right, you can't track it.
That's all you get. Right. It's not going to follow can't track it. Yeah, it's not connecting. Apple said it's Find My support, but it's not connecting to the Find My network. So still a decent upgrade. It feels like one of those things that should have been there. You don't need the new iPhone to do that. That it works with the 12 too. It's just the new
which
wallet.
is $59, I think.
So if you're into that MagSafe wallet, yeah, and I got one of those that I haven't started messing around with too. But I hope the magnet's stronger too. That's the other thing, is that you need to stick on a little better. So we'll see.
Oh, speaking of the MagSafe, just to, I guess, bring to the attention of our listeners, what adapter is in the iPhone 13?
It's the same adapter, the USB-C to Lightning. You talking about the cable?
Yeah, the cable, but no adapter, no power adapter. Yeah, and the same. It has the same sort of qualifications for how to get the fastest charging. You need that 18 or 20 watt USB-C to get the fastest charging or something. It charges at the same speeds with MagSafe and everything. So there's been no updates from the 12 in terms of like charging ability.
15 watt, I believe. Same. I'm sorry, I'm talking MagSafe. 15 watt MagSafe still. 20 watt charging. Yeah, they didn't talk about that at all at the event.
They don't say. They say this many % in 30 minutes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, Jason and Mike will be working on their reviews, and they'll be posting them as soon as possible. So keep an eye out on the website. We'll obviously follow up on the Macworld podcast.
I can almost guarantee Jason's will be before mine.
Yeah, we're just busy.
His is the more important one anyway.
We'll have pretty benchmark charts and all this stuff too. Maybe I think more people will be.
I think the 12 and the 13 Pro are going to be the most popular iPhone models going forward.
Yeah, the Max. Well, we'll see. Next year will be really interesting because next year they're replacing the Mini,
allegedly,
or supposedly replacing the Mini with a large inexpensive model. So it'll be the 13 and 13.
Inexpensive
14 and 14
will be
Max,
like probably,
and the 14 Pro and the 14 Pro
which
Max.
makes more sense, I think, from a logistics standpoint. It also raises the average selling price, which Apple loves to do, because you got that $700 mini. Yeah. Now that'll be a $900 Max. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, but it lets people get the big phone without spending $1,200, and that's.
I think so too, and I wonder what they do about now the low end. Does the low end start at $800, or do they cut the price of the what would be the 14 at that point down to?
Yeah, do they keep around a second phone? Like they keep around now that the 13's out, they're keeping around the 12, but just the 12,
right?
Not the 12 Pro, Pro Max, Mini, none of those, just the 12. Like, the next year do they start keeping around the 13 and the 12?
They do have the Mini.
The 12's like a cheaper one, and then the
Mini's available, Jason, not the Pro though. Yeah, so $599 Mini, $699 Pro. Okay. The 11 is just the 11. No, well, there wasn't one. Oh no, there was. Yeah. And so there was no 11 Mini. So it's just the iPhone 11. That's $399 for the SE, $499 for the 11, $599 for the 12 Mini, $699 for the 12, and the 12 and the 13 Mini, and then up from there. They have every single price point nailed.
Yeah. I will say this for the A15, it makes me really look forward to the M2 products. If the M2 is to the A15 what the M1 was to the A14, if they just say, all right, it's 4 high performance cores instead of 2, and we're doubling the GPU cores to from 5, they go from 5 to 10. Maybe the cheapest MacBook Air has like 8
not to get
something, but that
not
would
to switch gears too much, but the rumors are that's what you're describing is the M1X, and the M2 would still have 4 and 4. That's what the rumors say.
Well, the M1X would be based on the A14's architecture. Yeah. Supposedly. What I'm talking about is using the A15's architecture, because this isn't just changing the number of cores. They've made changes the architecture, the neural engine's changed. There's I bet $1,000 they're using LPDDR5 now instead of LPDDR4X and stuff. So memory bandwidth is increased. So there's other architectural improvements, and my understanding was that the rumors the M1X is taking the M1
more cores,
and doing more cores. The M2 would be taking the A15 and doing the same thing they did with the M1
maybe
and A14.
Next, it would be the MacBook Air. The rumored MacBook Air was allegedly the first one to get it, but the last Gurman report said the M2 would have the same cores as the M1. But these are just rumors.
Yeah, and nobody knew there'd be a fifth core in the M15, the A15, which is probably always there. It was probably always a redundant core that was disabled to improve yields. And now the yields are good enough that they can put.
That's what they did with the 12Z and the iPad Pro a couple of years ago. Same concept.
Yep. Yeah, the 12X and 12Z were the same thing. They just re-enabled a core. It's really common to have extra GPU cores and disable them.
I mean, we even see it in the M1 MacBook. The MacBook Air, the low end has one less than the higher, the 256 version or 512, whatever it is.
Yeah, and it's not they're not manufacturing a different chip. They're just taking the ones where there's a defect and somewhere in the GPU core array and disabling that one GPU core and getting a good chip out of it. And this is, everybody does this. Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, like everyone does this.
But I agree, it's super exciting for the Mac. I can't wait to see what the next 2 chips are.
Yeah. Yeah, we've have a recent article on the website about how the M1X MacBooks are going to be this year's star product. And I think that's probably true, especially if they really do something great with the display. But this is when Macs get exciting, like for the first time in a long time. Kicking Intel the best thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's power that you'll actually use, and like you were saying with the iPhone, like it's great that they're this fast in the benchmarks, but it's a phone. On the Mac, all that extra speed, every ounce of it is important.
And gives you just like killer battery life. They just also just gave you way more battery life with the exact same battery as before. So now we'll see what they do once they actually start changing the design and form factor of the MacBook.
Well, that just about does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 761. Thanks to Jason Cross.
Thank you.
Thanks to Michael Simon.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. And thanks to Declutter for sponsoring the podcast. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in the podcast app, on Spotify, or through any other podcast app. If you have any comments or questions, send us an email at podcast@macworld.com or contact us through Twitter, that's @Macworld, or on the Macworld Facebook page. Join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.